It's been a week since President Trump met with North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. They signed a document that laid out broad principles in which the United States would provide security guarantees to North Korea, and North Korea committed to eliminating its nuclear weapons. But the agreement did not have a timeline or provide any specific details of what comes next. So what are the next steps? For that, we turn to South Korea's first Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lim Sung-nam. He is a veteran diplomat. He's dealt extensively with North Korea. Minister Lim, thank you very much for being here. So your president, Mr. Moon, called this summit a great victory. He said it's a huge step forward. And yet a number of American officials who've dealt with North Korea in the past said they didn't see very much in the way of specifics. They don't really understand that North Korea has made a serious commitment to denuclearize. What makes your president so positive?
Well, you should first think about the history of the relationship between the DPRK and the United States. For more than 70 years, there has been no summit meeting between the two countries. And for more than 70 years, there has not been any kind of meaningful agreement between the two countries at the level of the heads of states. And now that the Singapore Declaration has set out the big principles for going ahead with denuclearization, I think the two leaders have laid a meaningful foundation on which to further build the process of denuclearization.
Are there tangible signs that you have seen that tell you North Korea is serious about carrying through with this? I ask because the statement they issued at the end of the summit was, what, 1.5 pages long? And some of the diplomatic language in there was the same language that had been in previous statements. So what's new? What's tangible?
Well, for instance, they have been taking unilateral actions, such as shutting down their nuclear testing sites, and they vowed to dismantle the key rocket engine testing site as well. And they also released 3 American hostages without getting any kind of concessions from the U.S. side. So these actions do support the sincerity of the North Koreans in going ahead with denuclearization down the road.
So what do you see as the next steps? What is going to happen next? The North Koreans put out a statement after the summit. They describe what they see unfolding next. What do you see? Well,
if you look at carefully the Singapore document, the two leaders agreed to fully and speedily implement the agreement. And they also agreed on the need for the speedy follow-up negotiations. So I'm sure, and I do hope, that in the very near future, there will be follow-up negotiations at the working level to implement the Singapore agreement. Are there working level meetings going on now? Right now, I don't think so, but in the near future, I do believe there will be some meetings. Will South Korea be involved in those? Are those just between North Korea and the U.S.? Those will be the working level negotiation between the United States and the DPRK. But we also have the inter-Korean talks with Pyongyang. The leader of North Korea has indicated that he's prepared to denuclearize, at least in general terms. President Trump is saying the nuclear threat is gone. It's behind us. Do you have that confidence? Well, of course, their nuclear weapons and facilities still exist. But if you compare the situation with the situation about a year ago, then I think the changes have been very positive. About a year ago, we were talking about the sheer number of the missile launches by the DPRK, and we were afraid that there could be another nuclear testing in North Korea. But now we are talking about how we can go ahead with the dialogue. And as claimed by Winston Churchill, JoJo is better than World War. So you trust the North Korean leader, Chairman Kim, to go ahead with denuclearization. You have confidence he will do that? Well, we believe so, and we hope so. And always, a new history can be made only with optimistic assumptions.
We saw after the summit, President Trump spoke about the suspension of what he called war games, joint military exercises between the United States and your country and South Korea. He said those are very expensive. He said that's something I've wanted to do away with for a long time. Is your country, is your government comfortable with that?
Well, both Seoul and Washington are on the same page regarding the important issues like the joint military exercises. Having said that, the U.S. was also very clear that as far as the talks with North Korea go in good faith, we can afford not to have the kind of the military exercises we used to have in the past.
Were you surprised? Did your government know ahead of time that President Trump was going to declare that these war games were stopping?
Once again, I'd like to emphasize that our two countries have been on the same page on the important issue like that.
So you weren't surprised?
Well, I was not surprised.
I want to ask you also about security guarantees from the U.S. going forward. What else do you see that the U.S. could do for the North to make it more possible for the North to go ahead with denuclearization?
Well, at the end of the day, I suspect that the normalization of the relationship between Pyongyang and Washington might be one way of providing Pyongyang with a kind of the security guarantee. But on the way to the kind of the security guarantee, which we might be able to provide for Pyongyang, I think the two Koreas and the U.S. might be able to declare that war is over on the Korean Peninsula. That could be the kind of the interim step on which we can further build the permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula.
You think that should be done before North Korea dismantles its nuclear program?
Well, those kind of details can be further discussed between South Korea and the United States, as well as between the United States and North Korea.
You mean, you're saying it's a detail, but that's a pretty major detail, isn't it? Whether there's peace, whether the war has actually come to an end, the conflict?
Well, I think what I'm talking about is a political declaration. I'm not talking about the kind of the legal agreement for creating peace regime. But at one point, we might be able to benefit from the kind of the political declaration regarding the security situation on the Korean Peninsula.
Do you think reunification could come in your lifetime?
I hope and believe so. Once again, only with optimistic visions, we might be able to turn a dream into reality.
And one other thing, what have you learned about Chairman Kim in these most recent round of negotiations that you didn't already know about him? What is he, how is he presenting himself as a leader, and what do you think his priorities are?
I think he is a leader different from the previous leaders of North Korea. He was bold enough to come to the meeting with the U.S. President face to face, and I believe he has made a strategic decision to get out of the self-imposed isolation. And plus, in the past, North Korea was talking about the Pyeongjin Noson, which is kind of dual-track policy of pursuing the nuclear and missile capabilities as well as the economic prosperity. But they declared in April this year that their policy focus is now on economic progress. So with all those changes, I believe he is coming to the meeting with President Trump with a determination to go ahead with denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
This potentially historic moment.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
The Foreign Minister, Vice Foreign Minister Lim Sung-nam, we thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Judy. Thank you.